everyone, and thanks for joining us today. We're going to be discussing all things home equity. We'll be covering what it is, how to use it, and how to get that loan process started with Neches. To start out, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker today. Kristi Dourian is here with us to educate us all on how we can put our home equity to work. Thanks for joining us today, Kristi.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
I'm glad to have you. Kristi is our mortgage lending manager here at Neches, and I'm very glad to have her share her expertise with our membership. Kristi, we'll go ahead and get started. Let's start out with the basics. Can you explain home equity and what that loan process looks like?
Yeah, okay, perfect. So your Texas Constitution defines the homestead and establishes limits and protections for homeowners. So for example, you're only allowed to borrow up to 80% of the home's market value. It must be your primary residence. You have to consent, each owner and each owner's spouse has to consent to the mortgage. You can refinance and increase the limit of your home equity loan yearly, once per year, up to 80%. There's no limit to the amount of home equity loans you can do. You just have to wait that 1 year time frame to do the next one. And you can only have one home equity loan on your property at a time. So in other words, you can't have a first lien home equity and a second lien home equity. You can only have one at a time. And the cash proceeds from the home equity loan can be used for any purpose without restriction or limitation by the lender. In other words, the lender can't dictate what you do with those equity proceeds.
I'm glad that you mentioned that a home equity loan can really be used for any purpose without restriction. Can you give us some examples of some common ways that home equity is used?
Sure. So most common ways that we see consumers use their home equity are for, debt consolidation. You can pay off high interest credit cards. You can consolidate all of your student loans, pay those off. You can either draw out it or accelerate the time that it takes to repay those things. So debt consolidation, a lot of consumers will use it for home improvement to do that add-on or the remodel that you've been wanting to do, make those updates. Or say you've got an emergency situation where you need to repair a roof and your insurance isn't covering that, or you need to, maybe you want to enlarge your driveway. Anything for home improvement that you can think of, you can use those equity proceeds for. And then things like college education expense. A lot of people will use their equity to pay for their children's college instead of having their children take out those education loans, or to fund, maybe pay for the wedding that their child has always dreamed of. So there's really anything that you can think of that you need to fund, you can use those equity proceeds for.
That's eye-opening for me, that home equity is not just used for home improvement. People are using it for other things, like you said, like debt consolidation and paying for college. So that's really unique and something that I didn't realize people are using it for other things besides just home improvement.
Yeah, I've seen people use it for business startup costs. Maybe they've got a side venture that they want to get, they need those startup funds, so they'll use the equity in their home to do that. There's all kinds of things, investments, yeah, projects, anything you can think of. There are no restrictions that the lender can place on you to use those funds.
Kristi, I know we've seen an increase in home equity being used over the last few years, and we've also seen an increase in home expenses and a change in the real estate market. Are people using home equity for more traditional purposes, or are we starting to see more creativity to combat some of those changes?
That is a great question. Yeah, COVID really changed the landscape, and it made affordability very challenging for the last few years. So we've seen a lot of homeowners who, wanted to make that upward move. And it just doesn't make sense right now because of interest rates, insurance, taxes, all of the things that are kind of going into uh, purchasing a home. So one of the trends that we've been seeing, and one of the things that I've been discussing with borrowers for the last couple of years, is using that home equity to either, pull that cash out and use it to make a larger down payment and buy your interest rate down so that you can make that move make sense. If you are moving from a smaller home to a larger home, or if you're trying to upgrade, or what we're seeing a lot of people do right now is take the cash equity out and use that to do the add-on or to do the improvements so that staying in your current home makes sense. It's just there have been unprecedented gains in equity throughout COVID, as we've seen market value increase. And so you can tap into that equity and be in a much better position financially monthly in terms of your monthly payment by using that equity to upgrade.
That's so interesting. Well,
Mm.
let's talk about our options, Kristi. If a member watching this is interested in a home equity loan, how do they go to get that process started with Neches?
So yeah, we try to make that as easy as possible. You can call, you can come in and speak to a loan officer in person in most of our branches. But the quickest way would be to apply online. You can click on our website, go to the mortgage lending section, and you can choose the loan officer that's closest to your location and apply directly online. Once we get that application in our queue, we'll reach out to you promptly and kind of get the ball rolling. And it's a fairly simple process.
It definitely seems like it's quick and easy on your end.
Yeah.
Well, Kristi, thank you so much for joining us today. Before we close out, is there anything that you'd like to add about home equity or about our mortgage services in general?
Yeah, sure. So the home equity process with Neches it's probably the easiest loan. We are experts at home equity loans here. And most cases it's going to be about a 2-week process from start to finish. And also in most cases, there's not going to be a need for an appraisal or anything like that. The closing costs are minimal. In fact, that's one of the things that the Texas Constitution limits lenders on to. So you're going to find it inexpensive and quick from start to finish. It's one of the best lending products that we have, if not the best.
Well, Kristi, thank you so much for sharing this information with us today. And to everyone watching, we thank you for joining us. If you are interested in a home equity loan or you have any other mortgage related questions, like Kristi said, feel free to visit us in branch, give us a call or chat with us through our website, and we'll be happy to assist you. And as always, we thank you for being a member of Neches Federal Credit Union.